Yo, dudes, Oren here. Welcome to another episode of Primetime Preview where we're doing week 4 Thursday night football. And this is going to be the Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers. And we're going to talk about the offense, defense, or just a quick glance of where each team is ranking offense, defense, special teams. Brief description on coaches, players who are on the rookie contracts, and I'll give a final verdict on who's going to win. So let's start with the offense here. Detroit is ranked 8th in the league in overall offense. That's average yards per carry. That's the main stat, in my opinion, to go by. And rushing yards per game, they are ranked 11th in the league. And then passing yards per game, they're ranked 7th in the league. That's their offense. While the Green Bay Packers, meanwhile, their overall offense, their average yards per game is ranked 22nd, while their average rushing yards per game is ranked 23rd, and their average passing yards per game is ranked 19th. So Detroit is way significantly ahead of Green Bay as far as offense goes. So I will give the check mark and the advantage to the Detroit Lions offense over Green Bay. As far as defense goes, Detroit's overall defense, the amount of passing yard or overall yards they've given up per game, they ranked 11th, while their rushing yards allowed per game is ranked 5th in the whole league. That's out of 32 teams. And then passing yards allowed per game is ranked 19th. So the rush, they have a really good rushing defense so far this year. Meanwhile, Green Bay overall defense ranked 15th. Overall yards allowed per game. Rushing yards allowed per game is ranked 10th, while sorry. 15th for overall defense for the Packers. Rushing yards allowed per game they were ranked 27th there. That's toward the bottom of the league. And then passing yards allowed per game for Green Bay's defense is ranked 10th. So even though I like to say that it's more important to be able to reduce passing yards than it is rushing yards, and Green Bay is ahead of Detroit in that one. Detroit's rankings are on an average pretty well ahead of Green Bay's, in my opinion. I mean, they ranked 5th in one of the categories, rushing, and Green Bay is trying to be a rushing team often, while their highest statistic passing allowed is like 10th, and then meanwhile like their rushing allowed is like 27th, which is quite toward the bottom of the league, where Detroit's middle at worst with that. So for now, I'll give the defense advantage to Detroit. And then special teams, let's talk about that. Just from looking at the statistics there, the average amount of punt return yards per game, Detroit ranks 16th, while the average amount of kick returns per game, they rank 30th. That's toward the bottom. And then meanwhile, Green Bay punt returns, average yards per game, they rank 14th, which is like in the middle. Kick returns, average yards per game, they rank 5th. That's right up there among the leaders there. And then as far as their kicking goes, I looked at both their field goal percentage and extra point percentage, and they're both like tied for first at 100% with each of them. However, Green Bay does have one 52-yard field goal successfully made this season so far, while Detroit's kicker, Riley Patterson, the farthest he's kicked was 38 yards. Patterson, I do know as a Lions fan, Patterson is accurate, but not as rangy. So while I know Detroit does like to prioritize their special teams, like their statistics indicate that Green Bay would have the advantage here for special teams. As far as coaching goes, Dan Campbell's in his third season. He's really made a lot of progress from the rebuild, and now they have a lot of hype and a competitive team. And same with like Aaron Glenn. He's their defensive coordinator. He likes to switch players around and try to give different looks as best as he can. He did receive some criticism last week after losing to Seattle for not being diverse enough with his schemes, and that other teams may or may not have figured it out. But the defense showed up this most recent game, and now no one's talking about that anymore. And meanwhile, Ben Johnson, after last season, he became one of the top head coaching candidates, but he decided to go back to Detroit. And a lot of people think of him as arguably the top offensive coordinator in the league. Meanwhile, Green Bay's coaches, their head coach is Matt LaFleur, who pretty much took over starting in the 2019 season. He's gotten the Packers as far as the NFC Championship game, where they just barely lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a few seasons ago. He actually has a bit of a background at Central Michigan University, which is where I went to college and graduated from, as well as a couple other colleges within the state of Michigan. But he was an offensive assistant with the Houston Texans, a quarterbacks coach for a number of teams such as the Washington Redskins. That's what they were called at the time. Notre Dame's college football team as quarterbacks coach as well there, as well as the Atlanta Falcons. And then eventually in 2017 was the Rams offensive coordinator, as well as the Titans the following year before getting hired by Green Bay. So that's the idea with him. Adam Stefanich, I believe I pronounced that correctly as best I can. He seems to kind of have a background with the University of Michigan, as well as Northern Arizona and San Jose State. Basically, his experience is working with the offensive line. He's had several positions as an offensive line coach, and he was the Packers offensive line coach from 2019 to 2020, while that guy who did such a bad job head coaching the Denver Broncos and now was with the Jets is over there, and he stepped up after that guy left. I'm drawing a blanket on his name at the moment, but I mean, his name is not really worth saying right now because he hasn't done much there. So, but anyways, this offensive coordinator is somewhat kind of he was the offensive line coach as well as the run game coordinator. So it tells you kind of Green Bay is trying to prioritize the rushing game as best they can with this offensive coordinator, Mr. Adam Stefanich, or however you pronounce his name. And then Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator is Joe Barry. And from what I can tell, Packers fans are skeptical of this guy's performance, considering last year the Packers were expected at the start of the season to believe to have been, we're supposed to have one of the best all-time defenses. Like they're talking about them in terms of like the 85 Bears, I guess, maybe somewhere close to that, but it didn't work out. And a lot of the blame went to the defensive coordinator, Joe Barry. Interestingly enough, this was before my time, but he was the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions way back in 2007, 2008. So I don't remember if that was right around the season. That might have been the season where the Lions went 0-16. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he's coached for a number of other teams, such as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the San Diego Chargers, Washington Redskins, mainly working with the linebackers, as the linebackers coach. He was the defensive coordinator also for the Redskins from 2015, 2016 for a bit, as well as assistant head coach with the Rams for a few years, 2017 to 2020, and then came over to Green Bay in 2021, and he's been here since then. But it sounds like he's somewhat on the hot seat if Green Bay's defense can't deliver there. So he's definitely the most, as far as I can tell, the most experienced coach out of all the coaches I talked about here. But it's a close one. It could go either way. I think Ben Johnson, I think, kind of tips the scales for me to kind of go towards the Lions favoring in this game. And I really, Matt LaFleur, he might have won Coach of the Year a few years ago. I can't really remember. I don't think he did. I'm just looking at his Wikipedia page real quickly, and no, I'm not seeing anything. Feel free to correct me if that's the case, but tip the scales, Ben Johnson, a superstar football mind in the making, I think tips the scales for the Lions to get the coaching advantage here. As far as rookie contracts go, obviously you have Jordan Love, who's on his fourth year. He'll depending on how well he plays this year, he might get franchise tagged, or they might extend him because he sat for the first 3 years under while Aaron Rodgers was still playing there. So that's been talked about to death, it seems like. And then after that, in the 2021 draft, I was looking through the list, and the only name I recognize on here still was Eric Stokes, cornerback from Georgia that was drafted in the first round, and his calling card was that he was very fast, and he's the only name I recognize on that from that draft class. But the other two draft classes have some significant names from some contributors, such as Quay Walker, who has got to be careful not to get ejected for shoving coaches or trainers, because that happened to him twice last year. And then players like Devontae Wyatt, who are also starting to come out of their shell as a defensive lineman this year. He's one of the players on defense I would watch out for if I was the Lions. And then Christian Watson, he hasn't played yet this year, but he might play in this game as his first year. And if he does, he's probably the biggest offensive threats I think the Lions will have to worry about. And I thought Christian Watson, I didn't think he'd get injured to start the year, but I thought Christian Watson would, really take the next step up and become a superstar wide receiver, kind of somewhere in the Jamar Chase range. I thought the Lions might have a chance at drafting him too if they wanted him, but they went with trading up for Jameson Williams instead. And he's tall, he's lanky, and he's got the build, and he's developed into someone who at least won offensive player of the month at one point last season. So they also have other weapons like Romeo Dobbs from that draft too, who has done some stuff, caught some balls, got some yards, got touchdowns and stuff like that. And then from this past draft from earlier this year, you have more offensive weapons who can catch the ball and that sort of thing. So Luke Musgrave, the tight end from Oregon State, as well as Jalen Reed, wide receiver from Michigan State. I've seen both of those pass catchers be productive and help out Jordan Love somewhat well. And then defensive players like Lucas Van Ness, who was drafted in the first round, defensive end out of Iowa. He could definitely do some things as a rookie, but he's still probably developing it somewhat. And then Brooks, the defensive tackle from Bowling Green. I don't know if his name is Carl or Kerry or whatever his first name was. I noticed it somewhere else, but he could be a rotational piece that has some potential. I tried to focus on him, maybe somebody the Lions might draft, but that didn't turn out that way. Yeah. And then you've heard me talk about the Lions draft class before, and that's pretty much all I've focused on in the last few years, ever since the Holmes and Campbell regime took over. But the Lions, they got Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have Penei Sewell so far. They have a Lee McNeil who stepped up and had a really good game the game I went to in Atlanta a few days ago. They have Aiden Hutchinson. They have Brian Branch. They have Jack Campbell. And Brian Branch had a really big game also a few days ago, and I was there and witnessed it. And they have Sam Laporta, who also had a really good game. A lot of good catches for the tight end there. They have Jahmyr Gibbs, who's still making strides and becoming a better running back. So he felt like he might have been average throughout the game, but then toward the end of the game on the drive with the Lions scored the touchdown. Goff ran it in. Gibbs had some big carries where he was finally getting going. So need I say more about the Lions rookies on their rookie contracts? This is the Lions' bread and butter, and this is what makes the Lions a force to be reckoned with in the league now. So And my final verdict, this could be a very tough game. Both teams seem like they're very similar. They have the same record. They seem like they're built the same way, and both teams are facing a number of significant injuries. And I honestly don't know who's going to win this game until I watch it tomorrow. But I'll just say this: in the year 2023, this year, I have already been to a game at Lambeau Field where the Detroit Lions defeated the Green Bay Packers. It was a game that I watched with my own two eyes, physically in person, without a TV or a screen of any kind, where the Detroit Lions had nothing to play for because they had just found out that they were eliminated because Seattle eliminated them. And they went in there with, nothing, no stakes. And they went and defeated the Green Bay Packers, who were trying to get a playoff spot. And if they won, they would have got in, but they didn't. And they lost to us, Detroit Lions. And I was there and I watched Aaron Rodgers walk off of Lambeau Field with Randall Cobb for the final time wearing Green Bay Packers uniforms. So I've seen the Lions already beat the Packers at Lambeau Field once this calendar year. So I know that they can do it again. Boom. Yes, I'm biased, but I don't care. That's the primetime preview. Join me for the live stream. I'll be live streaming the game. This will be for first place in the NFC North. This will be a good one. And I'll see you there. And go Lions, one pride.